must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is. It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, he is our son and he is our thief.
If you are deviant and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth in the security, governance, and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers, do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa. The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa. We discuss Africa. We see what ails Africa. And today, this afternoon, we want to see whether Sudan will permanently remain a sick child of Africa. Is it a permanent sickness? Can we resolve the issues of Southern Sudan? Is it something that has gone wrong for 200 years? There has always been a problem in Southern Sudan, in that great region, starting from all the way the Alimadi Wars and the rest of all what happened until today. Peace seems to be elusive. Why has UN taken slow action? Why hasn't UN set up a tribunal? We want to see a tribunal that will make sure that Southern Sudan people are accountable. Those who committed crimes against the human beings. 20,000 Sudanese perished. They are perished. They are not accountable. Nobody can account for them. And we cannot sit here, go on hammering peace agreements without mechanisms of accountability. If we set a tribunal for Sierra Leone, for Rwanda, for Camera Rouge, we need somebody to stand up for the poor masses, the masses that have died, the masses that continue to die, the masses that are being brutalized, murdered, maimed on a daily basis by marauding armies of both Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. There must be an accountability. You are not going to sit here and tell people there is no accountability in Southern Sudan. There must be a tribunal. Why do we run to harass countries of Kenya, put ICC on Kenya, put ICC on this country, put ICC on Central African Republic? Why have we delayed on putting a tribunal for Southern Sudan to find out who is killing, who has been killing, how they have been killing people? Let me speak for the people in Southern Sudan, the women, the children who have not gone to school, the children who have no medicine, the children who have nothing, who have been running since 2013, and the war cannot end because of two people. Let them face the tribunal. I'm not going to keep quiet as a Pan-African to see Southern Sudan being maimed, being tortured, being cut, dismembered, and we keep quiet and watch people vote images of people, of malcontents singing to us in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in South Africa, telling us they have money. Let them face the international tribunal and tell the tribunal who gave them the guns, where they buying them, how they were killing people. Enough is enough. Enough is enough for Africa. We have had enough. There is no need of that anymore. Enough is enough. And if people have died, they will not cry. We people who are left on planet Earth must cry for them. We must find justice for them. We must make sure that their leaders who go on bragging on television stations all over the world who are accountable. They must be behind bars. Thank you very much, viewers. Good morning, Africa, wherever you are in Africa. Thank you very much. This morning, we shall look at the newspapers from Kenya, and then we shall also look at the topics as arranged that are here. And these topics are very, very crucial for the people of Kenya and the people of Africa. The first topic in Africa in Kenya will be on corruption. Are the cartels fighting back in Kenya? It looks like the cartels are fighting back, and the war seems to be going forward, backwards. No big pharaoh has gone down. We seem to have more accusations. But join us in this discussion together with our brothers in South Cameroon Broadcasting Corporation, partners in the Pan-African Dream. We shall be broadcasting all over the world. Wherever you are, you can watch us on channel 002 of Nilosat, which is direct, and it has no problems at all. Enjoy the views. Send us your views. This morning, let's look at the war of corruption. And later on, the general topic for Africa is who owns regime change in Africa? Who owns it? Who is the owner? Who gives the directives? Who is commanding? Who is organizing? Who is logistically supplying, materially and financially? Who is doing that? There must be somebody who is funding this regime change in Africa. And the regime change in Africa, someone is funding it. Someone is saying, does Africa not have peace at all? This morning we shall look at Zimbabwe, Sudan, Uganda, Egypt, South Sudan, and then cross over to Cameroon. Who is funding a regime change? Who is funding the violent demonstrations? But first, let's look at the Kenyan news. The Star newspaper of the Kenya says, investigate Ouko team over audit reports. It is indeed becoming very, very strange that all this are happening when almost every county has the presidential, something to do with the president. So who fixed this? Who fixed this? Who has fixed Africa? Who has created Africa into a place where corruption is embedded? Corruption is embedded in this whole thing. Look at all these problems. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 governors. Where is the Auditor General in Kenya to tell us the truth? Did he audit these accounts? Were these submitted by the governor's accountants or the chief officers? Who submitted these accounts? We need the governor in the Auditor General of Republic of Kenya has not come out. He hasn't even come out to say this thing is not there. He hasn't. But viewers, whatever time, whatever place you are in Africa, whichever country you are in Africa, there is something that is disturbing Africa. And that thing is corruption. We are running to these big countries to borrow the money. But after borrowing this money, we bring this money to this country. Every country in Africa has a debt with China. Either China is building a road, either China is building a dam, either China has built a stadium, either China has given it money for food, agricultural projects, or rice schemes. Every country in Africa seems to be having something to do with debt. But are we borrowing this money to bring it back to be eaten by corruption? That's the question. That's the basis of all this. Do we have corruption eating this country every time? Who is eating this country? Is corruption dismembering this nation? Is this country going down? Or this other countries going down in Africa? Look at Kenya. Cartels are fighting back. Every department, every corner, every parastatal you go to, there is a corruption query. What is the problem here? What has gone wrong? How do we fight corruption? We put institutions to fight corruption, but the people politicize corruption. From the word go, it looks there are people who knew more about these corruption deals than many of the Kenyans. There are many Kenyans who might not have known corruption scandals. But let me make it very clear and categorical that corruption has eaten the most fabric of this country called Kenya. Corruption is eating. When you go to every institution, I was watching the LSK debate. Lawyers were put on TV to choose who should be their leader. But people were not remorseful about the actions that they had taken. So who is without a problem in this country? The Daily Nation of Kenya therefore graphed Sonko and Waititu under probe. That is the Daily Nation of Kenya, as you can see. The probe extends, and we see the anti-corruption creating a lot of rifts. The corruption war has created rifts within the government and the several institutions. There are those for and those against. Government cannot work that way. A government has to be firmly behind a decision that they have taken to fight corruption. We can't have two governments in one government. People have to have one government speaking with one voice, making sure that the corruption that is there is wiped out. But the way we see things in Kenya is decisions are made, they are watered out in public rallies, in churches, in roadside announcements. We have taken things lightly. We have turned on the same institutions that the executive is supposed to safeguard, and the center cannot hold anymore. We come to lots of things that have happened. The situation in not only in Uganda, the situation is everywhere in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Khartoum, in Egypt, in Nigeria, is worse. The corruption is killing us. Cartels are fighting back. Look at the way the cartels have fought back in Kenya. Every time you go to arrest, there is someone who has now even gone to, if you want justice, if you want your bail, the courts used to set, but now there is a cartel, a group that talks to judges to cut down your bail. Swazuri got bail reduced. People put him on hostage where he was even in prison to incriminate some people. This type of politics cannot work. To say so and so also ate this, I gave this money to this, why didn't you write that report before you went to jail? That is the way things are in the Daily Nation. On the Standard newspaper, Magoha shocker for universities. Professor Magoha, George, is it George or whatever? I have Professor George Magoha is a man I respect. Is both feared and again terrifying. He came up yesterday, indeed. Some of us can even support some of these things. There are people doing a courses that are not worth it. Courses that cannot give you food on the table. Courses that cannot even make you stop a matatu. Courses that cannot actually, you know, if you go to relate to international global community, these courses are useless. So Professor Magoha has said these are not going to be the same. He has taken over and he says, no, if you are a university and you are offering a degree or degrees, you must offer degrees that are worth, because we don't work in a vacuum. The professor is correct. You work to get employment everywhere. Did you know that there are over 1 million Kenyans today working on internet? Over 1 million younger Kenyans. The younger generation of Kenya is crying of jobs. The younger generation of Uganda is crying on jobs. But there are over 1 million Kenyans on the digital platform. Then we should diversify the question of searching for employment. Diversify the methods. Diversify the type of work. People are selling materials that are not even in London. They have never seen what a shop in London is. But they are buying material from London online. And that online is employment. You are selling a dress online from London, and it is being shipped to China, or from Nairobi, is being shipped to China or to Malaysia. You are earning 1,000 shillings or 2,000 shillings. This helps you to pay your rent. So jobs are available. People are not only doing the jobs. People don't want to look at what can be done. But jobs are available. These jobs can be made. The online job opportunities. In Kenya, we have 1 million youths. People don't know. And if you look at this, you will know that over 1 million youths are in Kenya working. They are working online day and night, 24 hours. They are earning a living in Kenya. So when we have this type of things, let's encourage our youth to go for these things, to go for them. You see, to seek very serious interventions that can help this country to grow, interventions that can bring peace to this nation, interventions that can bring prosperity. There's no need of having younger men hanging around the whole world seeking, waiting for external money to overthrow governments. This morning, the newspaper on the headline, top of the headline, Daily Nation, we shall bring it in the second part. But I felt like if you put that thing, production, I've sent you something. If you put that thing on for people to read, did you know that over 1 million people in Kenya between 18 and 28 are working online jobs? These Kenyans are have embraced the digital shift and are offering their services to global clients who pay them via PayPal and even M-Pesa. It is time we changed our mindset. It's mindset. If we changed the mindset and started talking about things that can improve other than looking at the government to offer you. When I started this digital television station of mine, so many people in Kenya laughed at me. Many people, 3 years ago, they said, what type of television is that? What does it do? How? Where is it? Why are you not on TV? I told them I don't need to be on TV in order to be seen. I can be seen in the digital age. This is the first television in Kenya which was made out of a digital platform where I'm seated here. This television has been working throughout, and it has brought changes. It has affected. It has brought results. It has effects, very good effects on the people of the world. Those who have benefited, including people of Gambia. It stood by the people of Gambia through my satellite system. I was able to broadcast messages against Yahya because he had blocked all the radio stations and the television stations. So digital platforms in Kenya have created employment. Why don't we shift to digital platforms? Look at that. Did you know that? We have today technology-driven items, work. if we keep on thinking of the old ways of going to do interviews. When I started this television, I did not know myself how to use what software, but I learned about software, how to make up a television station from the digital platform. Today, most of the digital, people are here. Every television station is doing the same what Matanga started 3 years ago. I am online, and my television is online. I speak from here. You pick me from Germany. Those on free to air, free to view, they are picking me from Germany. They are picking me from anywhere, from my satellite in Berlin. So it is very important that we should change our mindset. What kills Africa is the mindset. You are fixed to something very permanent. The changes that are coming in Europe, in Spain, in France, in Venezuela, in Libya, in Khartoum, all those things that you see on the streets are going to affect us. We need a social structure that is firm to stand the test of times. That is the way the digital platforms can help to create employment in Kenya. Magoha has advised that universities, the next 84 days are crucial in reforming higher education by reviewing the programs of the university. I agree with him. I agree with him 100%. We need to change. We need to change all this so that we can be able to get good people out of very many situations that we see today. Again, President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta has extended the tenure in the military changes. He has put on hold any promotion, but he has made a few promotions. Brigadier Mohammed Abdallah, promoted to Major General, and named Senior Director Staff Air. Brigadier Martin Chizito, promoted to Major General. Colonel Abdallah Gure Rashid, appointed Chief of Defense Training Headquarters. Colonel Paulo Kahuria, promoted to Brigadier. Brigadier James Mutuku, Chief Operations Defense Headquarters. Brigadier Chitafsi, Chief of Personnel. Brigadier Juma Muyikai, Commander Ahmad Brigade. He has named quite a number of people. Joseph Mburu, Ahmed Shop, Managing Director, Defense Forces Medical Scheme. He has made changes within the army, which helps in stabilizing this country. And also the president has shuffled around prison officers to make things work in his efforts to make sure that Kenya is stable. Activists question the over-revolution is the story that we are going to touch, whose revolution it is. And then the world rape who waves lives, the story, it can be found in the Standard. Reforms will prepare learners for the future. I agree with you. And that is it, coming all the way from Nairobi. Those are the newspapers. The last topic today, before we come to the top of the hour, is the question of JSC in Kenya. What does Judicial Service Commission, what should it look like? If you are in London, you know what a Judicial Service Commission would look like. But in Kenya, it looks like something has been bought, or it is being bought by the contestants, especially Professor Tom Ojenda, parties, lavishly parties, money changing hands, huge monies. All the purpose is to make sure that he wins and returns to JSC. So, a person who is influencing an election is able to go to JSC. And then what about influencing the judges? Those are the questions that I leave to Kenyans to answer. Thank you very much. I would like to take this opportunity to bring in some of the clips from Africa School of Thoughts, especially that one on taxation, and especially that one that urges President Uhuru Kenyatta to bite, to have some bite. Thank you very much. Viewers, as you know, we have been at the forefront in the fight against the judiciary. We have stated time and time again that the judiciary in Kenya is the source of the weaknesses that we see that cannot fight the vice of corruption. Millions and millions of Kenyan shillings, billions, have been stolen, and those people have walked scot-free, leaving the courts smiling the following day. It is time, therefore, for President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta to take a further step to bite. We have talked quite a lot. We need to bite. His Excellency needs to bite. He needs to take a step further to bite, to bring about changes in the judiciary. The Kenyan judiciary is an embarrassment to the institutions, to the arms of governance. The type of errors that are made in the judiciary cannot encourage any ordinary whistleblower, like some of us who have stayed course in defending, upholding the principles of the Jubilee government. It is therefore worrying that time year in, year out, we have spoken about judiciary, the corruption, from the time of elections, from it being captured by external forces of George Soros, NGOs, and other institutions that want to dismember this country from every part of governance. Few months ago, a delegation of people went to Italy. They were encouraged to have quite a lot of companies coming to this country to invest. Little known to everybody in Kenya was that these companies were coming to invest, but companies that were investing in this country, coming as investors, were bankrupt companies that had already been declared person and a grantor in terms of economics of those countries. Someone resurrected the pipeline and the lifeline of eating billions of shillings out of a scam, purportedly going to make water, bring water to some arid areas of this country. Every time we talk about corruption, every suspect taken to Muthaiga on Kamata Day like this one mentions someone above. The people of Kenya have been wondering, who is this above? Can the DCI and other institutions tell us who is this above, who has mastered the art of eating everything and everybody, including vomiting on his shoes or her shoes? Is this person omnipotent? Is he God? people will be very happy, Your Excellency, if you did the Israel tactic of bombing the enemy and ending the war in 5 minutes. There comes a time when you take a step to release the fatigue and evaluate whether you are doing very well or you are doing very badly. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you.
To be here today to participate with my brothers and sisters in this very important forum when we are reflecting and thinking about our country. When we are thinking about our country, we are thinking about ourselves, our people at home, and the generations to come. Mine is to assure you that we are doing our best as far as investigations are concerned. But at the same time, we do have quite a number of challenges, though they have not reached a point of dispiriting us, or rather demotivating us. We are trying to say that I wish everybody in this war of corruption may come on board. One thing I can say is, even before we go for some investigations outside there, some of the frustrations which really pull us down is some of the strange orders that we receive. Other than even starting the investigation, we are stopped even before we record a statement from somebody who you know very well are stolen from Kenyans. You know very well, and all Kenyans know, we are pursuing this person, and it's not something we're imagining. We all know, and we cannot lie to ourselves, surely, and everything can show, but we are stopped even before questioning that person. And when we receive some of those orders, like another one which I received just the other day, I was not even at the stage of even pursuing that person whatsoever. Then when the orders came, I read them very well. Do not use the door to go and arrest Mr. Hay. Then I said, okay, why is this preemptive? Then I said, fine, I consulted my regular advisors, they are here. And then I said, no, through my information, there is a window. If I cannot use the door to go and take Mr. Hay, then I'm going to use the window. And once I get through the window, I get a smoking gun, which is killing us. Just smoking, just immediately from murdering us Kenyans. When you steal from us, the hospital money, loans money, development fund for this country, what do you think you are? You are not better than that terrorist you are battering there in the Dusit and other areas. Then, immediately, faithfully carrying our smoking gun, then what happened? We are told, don't dare, don't even bring this smoking gun here. Don't even touch that person. We are bad. Please listen to me. I have it here. Why don't you give me 10 minutes even to demonstrate I'm not malicious? Surely this is what I have. Then if I am, prove me within these 10 minutes. Nobody is ready to listen to us. What I can say is, thank you for prayers and support from Kenyans. I know very well that issue of mafia in Italy, it was completely almost replica, the capture of the mafia. The way the war was won, and the people's cry, they were wiped dry their tears, it was through the corrective working and bravery of their police, prosecution, and judiciary. When most of them, they are on BCD, and then the police said, no, enough is enough. Our people have cried enough. Let's go to fight for our people. In as much some of them were still with the mafia, it was massacre. They said it's okay, let's die, but for the world cause of our people. The prosecution came on board and said, no, equally we hear the cry of our people. Let's join the war. They joined the police, the prosecutors. Then the judiciary came and said, no, then we shall not be left. They came on board. The war was won for their people, ultimately. We can say, equally in Kenya, we can take the cry of our Kenyans and say, this greed These millions we are stealing every day, starch them in bank, there are papers, we shall read them in this world. Let us say what is enough for us is what God has given us. And the moment we say collectively, we are going to fight this war together, I can for sure tell you, this country is beautiful, it has plenty for each and every one of us. And I can for sure we shall have peace of mind. And even during our last days when they do come, even that billionaire and all that, he will be smiling, knowing if there is heaven, me I'm a Christian, I believe there is one. At least then have a space after the one hereafter. So that one is to say, continue supporting us, praying for us. We shall do our level best, and we shall give all that we have for the sake of our motherland. Thank you.
We call for a non-violent revolution. We call for a non-violent protest. We call for a non-violent march. This is what we are demonstrating to the world, and we have resisted Mr. Biya's army of occupation in our land, but this is a moment that we must continue to stand firm.
Of this nation.
Along with many other Cameroonians, many of you, as far back as the early 90s, and more frequently lately, I have insisted upon the imperative nature of genuine dialogue. Unfortunately, the government's solution has been cosmetic reforms and repression. Teachers, lawyers who raised legitimate concerns were either arrested or forced into exile. Doctors, important people in our society who asked for genuine dialogue, were met with punitive transfers and humiliation. It is regrettable that the government hasn't learned from the past.
We are ambassadors. We don't need anything again. The only solution to the matter is let the government solve this problem by giving our independent freedom.
We have a territory of our own. We recognize international boundaries. We have a language. We have a culture. We have our own laws. We have everything that is required by international standards to be.
Thank you very much, viewers. Welcome back to the last segment of our show. This is Punchline Africa TV broadcasting all the way from Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya. Thank you very much to those watching us all over Africa, wherever you are, in Zimbabwe, in Libya, in Cairo, in Addis Ababa, in Khartoum, in Juba, in Asmara, in Mogadishu. Asante sana. Thank you very much in Abuja, Cote d'Ivoire, Libya, Tripoli, Rabat, Morocco. Thank you very much. Cape Town, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Harare, Rwanda, and Kinshasa, plus Maputo. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching us this afternoon or this morning. It's a few minutes to afternoon. We have some breaking news coming from Kenya. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for listening to our discussions on this television station. We want to thank you and your people to continue to watch, and the guidance that we might also say here helps us to formulate and helps the world to formulate its own decisions. The government of the Republic of Kenya has today replaced the government spokesman who was as lost as himself, who was consumed by either the cartels or he didn't know what he was supposed to do. Breaking news coming from Kenya is the government has got a new spokesman. He's a former retired military man, Colonel Obura, who will be working as a government spokesman. I have told people from 2013, I told you, the worst thing of what has killed Jubilee government is communication. There are so many good things that the Jubilee government has done, but the lack of communication, the creation of showbiz. Communication is not showbiz. The collecting of people to say, come and dance disco. The collecting of people say, oh, Your Excellency, see here, see there, see this. No, that is not communication. The communication of Dennis Tumbi is not communication. Some of us who have gone to school and studied, we feel ashamed to hear that some people talk of communication. Which communication? Which one? Thank you very much, President Uhuru Kenyatta, for appointing a new communication spokesman who will be talking on behalf of the government. The confusion that was in China, the confusion that is creating apathy. I will teach and teach. I am not seeking for jobs. I'm a consultant. My level is consultancy. Then why did I go to school to come and fight for smaller jobs? Mine is to consult, to be consulted. And that's it. And we shall be consulted. You give even the British government consultation, advice. You give them advice, the level. I've reached the age of advice. I have not reached I'm past the age of seeking for jobs. The only job that I need to do is to be a president of America, of my country, if I have intentions in the future. But you teach communication. Conflicts come because of lack of communication. I've told Kenyans from 2013, you cannot have, I'm relieved, I'm happy today. That is only last week that I mentioned it on CAS TV and everywhere, and on this television here. I said there is no communication. The government has collapsed because of communication. No effective communication strategy from the government. The president cannot go to China for an international meeting, and then you have newspapers printing that he is going for loans. That is, nobody corrected the version. Who was supposed to correct the version? Who? A government spokesman. Kenya does not have a spokesman. Two things that kill Kenya. Again, let me reveal. Maybe people will learn from me today. There are two things that destroy this country on the side of communication and delivery of services. Two things. One, Kenya does not have an international lobby. You don't have it. A country huge like Kenya, it has no international lobby. There's nobody to lobby. You don't need a Kenyan to lobby. You don't have international lobby groups. You allow Somalia to take you to court when we pay for Somalia's water, food, and everything. No. No. Somebody must come and stand and say, yes, I'm responsible. A good communications network brings about situations. That's why ministers in Kenya go with the president without notebooks. They just listen as if they have gone for a holiday. In fact, the trips have become holiday. Mr. President himself found it very difficult. He couldn't stomach it in Namibia to say, look, how because he's the only one communicating. You cannot bring Mr. Itumbi to bring us things fake wherever he gets them from. Faking, telling us facts. How can Itumbi have facts when he doesn't know where the Eurobond was sold, which street in London, where is it located, until he goes to his phone? There must be people who are internationally exposed who should be talking about things that touch this country, that help this country. We want to thank the president for the appointment of, let me read his name fully, such that you can know. Is Colonel retired Oguna named the new government spokesman to replace Mr. Kiraithi. Thank you very much. That is something that can make my heart better today, because Kiraithi is my friend, but he's a very bad workman. Because most of the time you either find him in one of these places where you expect a communication strategy to be said. Either he does his things the way, I don't know. That is very good. And if the appointment can start working, we shall be able to diffuse. Thank you very much, Colonel retired Oguna. If you need any help, you can come for it. You can seek that help from us. We shall be able to do it for you without any problem at all. But that is the news coming all the way from Nairobi. Thank you very much. Now, viewers, our topic, the next topic is who owns regime change? What is regime change? I can see quite a number of things happening, interestingly, the same things that I've been talking about. This young man called Mwangi, Boniface Mwangi. One day we were traveling from Zimbabwe to Nairobi. In the plane I had sat, he entered last. Then he saw me on the seat and said, "We are here, we are helping Chamisa to throw out your friend called Mnangagwa." I told Boniface Mwangi that you can do those things in Kenya, but when you continue visiting Harare, one day you might not come back, because Harare people and their systems are very effective. They will lock you up in the cells. He said, "No, we shall win an election." For the rest of all these years, regime changers have been surrounding Africa. These are the organizations that mainly have surrounded Africa. One, Open Society Foundations of George Soros. Two, Vanguard Africa of Jeffrey Smith. Three, Kofi Annan Foundation of the late Kofi Annan, which is now run by Kofi Nana Busia. Nana Busia, Dr. Nana Busia, the son of Kofi Busia, the former president of Ghana who was swept out of power by Rawlings, runs one of those organizations that is actually targeting Zimbabwe. Pan-African Forum notes that the pattern of violence that flows or that follows the hotly contested elections in Africa and the cry of fresh electoral reforms and the talk of alleged false electoral injustices by most defeated persons opposition leaders, especially in Uganda, Kenya, South Sudan, Sudan, and other places, Congo, Zimbabwe, is in the most affected countries, has caused what we call regime change. Gabon, Uganda, South Sudan, Togo, Benin, Libya, Egypt, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, all of them have a very serious implication. The implication is very clear that there is a regime change that is coming, or it is about to come. In Uganda, it has reached the apex, about to be there. In Khartoum, it is overflowing its banks. The generals tomorrow will announce a transitional government that will bring stability to Sudan. I will be able to tell you the names this afternoon after talking to the military council in that place. Facts. As the AU heads of state summit sat on 30th last year of July, I wanted to remind them that there is nothing called elections in Africa. Does Africa need elections? This weapon called regime change through local and international NGOs that help to trigger conflicts on the continent of Africa must be condemned. The constant supply of logistics by George Soros laundered money based in France to NGOs in Africa is what is causing us instability. The heads of state must be alerted that there is a dangerous trend created by George Soros and the United States of America, and a part of them, DSGE agents of France, from their comfort zones in the United States of America, create the havoc called regime change that we see on the continent of Africa. Notably, the events now in Zimbabwe and the events in Khartoum have hit headlines because George Soros funded opposition led by the NGOs and their puppet masters of the opposition that failed to win elections. I would like to be very frank and say that others who continue to threaten the spirit of constitutionalism in Africa, there are many African countries where the spirit of constitutionalism has been threatened, and this leads to regime change. Pan-African Forum would also like to borrow the immortal wording of reggae crooner Baring Levy in one of the greatest renditions, "We are living dangerously." Africa is living dangerously. A season where a repugnant clan of nondescripts, a pack of overrated academic and pirates in the world like. We are living with those people. People who are overrated nondescripts, overrated academics, overrated pirates, causing havoc on this African continent. In Africa, the following people have a tag, and when you see them in your country, you better start running very fast. One, George Soros. Do Jacqueline Klopper from Germany. 3, Maina Kiai from Kenya. 4, Alex Whiting from United States of America. Professor Alex Whiting. 5, General Obasanjo. 6, Gladwell Otieno. 7, Luis Moreno Campo from Argentina. 8, Johnny Carsons from United States. 9, Dick Morris from United States. 10, Jeffrey Smith of Vanguard Africa from United States. 11, Dr. Nana Busia from Ghana. If you see any of those people in your country, and then we have 12, Dr. Jean Ping from Gabon, and the 2 are late. That was Morgan Changarai and Kofi Annan. If you see any of these guys frequenting your place, you know they are looking for a regime change. You know they are coming with equipment to regime change. They are coming to take networks, to put networks in your country. Pan-African Forum is aware that these international gangsters, often armed with undiluted chupuza and a deadly arsenal of bombastic, ambiguous words directly airlifted from the dictionary and placed out of context to bamboozle and regale the heavily educated international community, specialized in vandalizing logic, disembowelling common sense, and violently attempting to sneak ignorance of regime change or uprising in Africa. Through the backdoor democracy, the wicked guys that I have told you collect money, collect strategy, make a strategy, arrange logistics, especially through South Africa to Zimbabwe, Botswana to Zimbabwe, Lusaka to Zimbabwe. They have surrounded countries. If you could look at what is happening in Uganda today, you will find some traces of regime change and the money being pumped from some quarters in the world. Pan-African Forum is determined that in this day and age of enlightenment, such retrogressive forces of darkness must be pursued tenaciously like Furies pursued Orestes, and their false theories of regime change, demented assertion, and noxious mumbo jumbo to be obliterated from the cause of any African misguided urban insurrection or coup against the public disorder that we see in Africa. It is this endeavor that the Pan-African Forum attention has been invited to a hack job of illegal swearing in ceremonies that take place. If you look at what takes place in Africa, as soon as people nowadays, they lose the election, they go to swearing in ceremony. Pan-African Forum wants to reaffirm its stance that George Soros, like many international terrorists, is happy to see Africa, and especially the economy of Zimbabwe, dead, such that it can resurrect an uprising. Fellow Africans, we in Pan-African Forum follow the words of the Indian statesman Jawaharlal Nehru. Facts are facts, and they will not disappear on account of your own likes. Fact cannot go away because you don't like it. President Uhuru Kenyatta remains the president of Kenya. Whether you want to bring your regime change tactics, there is the question of one president of Republic of Kenya who is the commander-in-chief of this country. Viewers, when you look at a situation like the one in Amazonia, it makes one sick that as much as France is agitating for independence, agitating for economic revival of most African countries, competing for their deals in making roads, in making other infrastructure, France has sponsored the killing machines that kill people in Amazonia. France is the main beneficiary of George Soros' money in Europe. One would wonder why George Soros, a multi-billionaire, would be banking money in Paris, almost 10,000 miles away from his New York offices. What does that money do in Paris? That money supports African countries, lulls them. While they are allowing you into their money, you borrow their money, they will be coming to check on projects at the same time, they will be overthrowing you. Viewers, it is the truth that we want to commend the work done by the former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, in saying that Africa needs a renaissance, in saying that Africa needs to stand up and open up to see for themselves what it means to be an African, in seeing that regime change is not only the solution. You can see in Sudan, the younger men who wanted power had not organized themselves to take over power. They are haggling. If you look at the new faces that are trying to even try to talk to a press conference, you would wonder as to whether the Africa that is coming tomorrow is going to look the same as the one we see on the news headlines in the rest of Africa. Finally, I want to thank all of you that we want to commend that the Pan-African Forum notes that the new weapon of regime change created by George Soros could cripple many African countries in Africa every time an election is conducted. Those countries holding elections this year must be very, very careful not to allow, not to intimidate, not to cheat. But if you have decided to do an election, let it be credible, because there is the opposition waiting to uprise in the corner in order to topple the government that has been elected. Whether votes were stolen, is still an election. The government that put itself through elections is bound to collapse if you don't give them a chance to prove what they said on their manifesto. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless Africa. Yes. Nemaliza.
You know, when one is asked to talk about leadership in Africa, one's mind wanders in many directions, because in the recent past, the continent of Africa has been the subject of scrutiny from many quarters. There are those who are Afro-pessimists and take the view that Africa will never realize our potential. There are those Afro-optimists who take the view that the jury is still out on the success or otherwise of the continent of Africa. I am an Afro-optimist. I take the view that this continent has had a glorious past, and that this continent has had her trials and tribulations, but her better days are in the future. There are those who, when talking about Africa, are in the habit of dealing with Africa as if it were one monolithic block. They do not recognize that the beauty of Africa is in her diversity. And indeed, when you care to undertake a geographical survey of Africa, you will be amazed at what the west of Africa offers, what the center of Africa offers, what the south of Africa offers, what the Horn of Africa offers, and what the north of Africa offers. That is the continent that we are talking about today. And we are talking about her because she continues in many ways to punch below her weight. And many are the commentators who take the view that the reason why she continues to punch below her weight is because the men and women who have had the privilege and honor to serve her in different political capacities or leadership capacities have not served her well. There may be merit in that assessment, but those who are quick to judge, those whose only claim to fame is that they are professional fault finders, must ask many questions before they judge and condemn Africa unfairly. This continent, and I remember, and if we are to judge this continent fairly, we must go back to the past and look to the past and ask about this continent. And there are many who have written about this continent. How many of you here will forget the great writings of Senegal's Anta Cheikh Diop, who has documented in many ways the glorious past of the continent of Africa, the great kingdoms in Africa. When Europe was still in the caves, Africans were building monuments. If they were not building them in the Ashanti Empire, they were building them in Monomotapa here in Zimbabwe. And there is a sense in which all those have been consigned to the Museum of History. And those who look at Africa see Africa as a scar on the conscience of humanity, not remembering that they were themselves co-authors of Africa's misfortunes. We are the only continent and the only people in the world who have been commodified. How many of you will remember that agrarian Europe had to commodify Africa in order to realize our level of development? At one time in those early days, we will remember, even as we talk about leadership, that half of the population of this continent was taken away. If they were not taken away from Ghana, which they then christened Gold Coast, they were taken away from Angola. If they were not taken away from Angola, they were taken away from Mozambique. If they were not taken from Mozambique, they were taken from Senegal. If the Arabs were not taking us, the Europeans were taking us. If the Europeans in their different tribes were not conquering us, they were stealing from us. Those are the realities that we don't talk about when we talk about this continent. And you know, if one cares to judge the African continent, one must be historically conscious. The oldest African country after we regained our independence from Greater Chief. And the question that we must ask ourselves, why is it that this continent finds ourselves in that space? If it is not Europe summoning us, It is the United States of America summoning us. Everybody is in the business of summoning us. One may ask, what has this to do with leadership? You know, I listened to the Chinese president speaking in eloquent Mandarin, saying how the relationship between Africa and China is a mutually beneficial relationship. He spoke about Africa as if it was one country. He did not remind himself, in my mind, that there are 55 countries in Africa, or 54 if you ask Morocco. And I listened to the Chinese president specifically mentioning the Gambia and a few other, and Sao Tome and Principe, that they were welcomed back to the world because they had renounced their relationship with Taiwan and they had now recognized the one China policy. Do I say this because there is anything wrong with China? No. I'm saying this because the Chinese are providing leadership for their people. They know exactly what they want for their people, and they are doing exactly what they want for their people for the benefit of their people. The question that I'm posing to us, do we know what we want for our people? Are we doing what we need for our people? And the answer is, I doubt. Why do I doubt? I doubt because at the end of the entire enterprise, the Chinese president said that he had given, or his government had given, 60 billion United States dollars to 54 African countries. Notionally, therefore, each country would be entitled to no more than 1.5 billion. Half of the presidents who are present in China, each one of them, half of them, can produce 1.5 billion. Sportsmen in Europe and America, including boxers, can earn $1 billion in a single bout. And we are here celebrating and singing the praises of China because they gave us 60 billion. Once again, it is a statement of their ability to recognize what leadership is all about. I'm submitting to us that when we interact with people like the Chinese, there is something to learn from them. We may condemn them at forums such as this, but there is wisdom in asking ourselves, how is it that this country, which about 30 years ago could not feed half our population, has in 30 years during our lifetime succeeded in pulling up nearly 800 million people out of poverty? How is it that every road that is now being built in Africa, whether the road is in Benin or in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Johannesburg, South Africa, or in Kigali, in Rwanda, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, there is a Chinese firm whose name I cannot pronounce as the contractor for that firm? How is it? How is it that China, which about 30 years ago did not produce a mobile phone, today out of every 10 mobile phones, we are using 6 which are from China? If it is not Techno, it is some other phone. If we are not inviting Jack Ma, we are inviting another Chinese, because we have seen that they have the ability to organize their affairs. Some of us, particularly those of us who are in the middle class, our pride is that our child is learning Mandarin as a second language, not isiZulu, Mandarin. I fear, Bishop, that in the next few years, when they bring their children for baptism, and you ask them, how do you name this child? They'll say, Deng Xiaoping Simfiwe. I'm still talking about leadership. We have seen what leadership can do. Leadership has catapulted China to another completely different orbit. We have seen that leadership has catapulted South Korea to a different orbit. We have seen that leadership has catapulted Vietnam, which was bombed to the ground in 1975. Vietnam now produces more coffee than all African countries combined. What have they done? The men and women who have been given the opportunity to serve those countries long recognize that leadership is about service. And I can't agree more with the Honorable Minister who spoke before me and the good Dr. Aaron who spoke before me that the true essence of leadership is self-discovery and self-esteem. You know, where I come from in my tribe, and I know in many African communities, when you do something very well, they say, you have done it like a white man. When you arrive on time, they say, he has arrived like a white man. When you speak well, they say, you spoke like a white man. When you dress well, you dress like a white man. When you go to a beautiful place in Africa, you say, it does not look like Africa, as if Africans are incapable of doing the right things. And I'm telling us that until the day that we exercise the ghost of low self-esteem, Africa is going nowhere. I'm submitting to us that history has demonstrated times without number that personal conquest is the beginning of true leadership. If you don't conquer yourself, you are going nowhere. And I'm submitting to us that Africa must now recognize that whatever institutions you have, until and unless it is populated by men and women who have ideals, those institutions will collapse, never to be put together again. So going forward, ladies and gentlemen, I hold the view that a conference such as this, that brings together men and women who recognize that Africa should occupy her pride of place amongst the Committee of Nations, must be a conference at which we speak to each other honestly. I think we Africans have been too kind to each other for too long. The time has come that we must annoy each other. It is only when we have annoyed you sufficiently that we can canalize that anger, and that anger can then be used to move mountains. And my joy is that Africa is not sleeping. My joy is that Africans are now beginning to wake up to the reality that we have not only the intellectual wherewithal, but that we have the resources to make our countries grow and grow in the proper direction. You know, not so long ago, and not so long ago in this case means about 50 years ago, I read and listened to the leaders of the early days. If you listen to any one of those leaders, the clarity with which they were able to identify the problems of Africa and the clarity with which they were able to prescribe the medicine that could solve the problems of Africa was as titillating as it was as astounding. You know, I listen to the more casual works and I read the casual works of a young leader in the 1980s, such as Thomas Sankara. You know, Thomas Sankara is a young individual whose claim to formal education was not very much. He did not hold any PhD. He was an army officer. He overthrows the government of Upper Volta, and he goes into government and poses the question, why are we called Upper Volta? And he says the first thing that we must do is to change the name of this country so that it becomes Burkina Faso, the land of the upright man, and that the people of this country must be called the Bukinabe, the upright people, and he says we have been suffering with hunger and food shortages for too long. We have depended on France for too long. We can no longer be children and toddlers in our adulthood. We cannot be in economic and political diapers for too long. And he begins to release the country. And no sooner has he succeeded in doing this than the erstwhile colonial power says that this is a bad example. And they eliminate him. And not only Thomas Sankara. I remember the man for whom I am named in 1961, Patrice Emery Lumumba, only aged 36, and he recognizes, and on that day of independence, not being scheduled to speak, he speaks nevertheless, and he says how happy he is that the history of the Congolese will be written by the Congolese, and they take him away. I listened to Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah saying that Africa cannot be free unless the whole of it is free. I look at the casual works of Bantu Stephen Biko. I listen to the casual works of Samora Moises Machel. I read the casual works of Modibo Keita in Mali. I look at the works of Agostino Neto, the works of Africans who are clear. And those of you who are alive, then you could see that the indices of development in Africa were moving up north. If it was not infant mortality that was beginning to be lowered, it was maternal mortality and crude death rates. Africa was moving. But remember that Charles Darwin is still right. In this jungle that we call the world is survival of the fittest and the dying of the least suitable. When we begin to rise as a people, there are those whose only claim to success is to put us down, to tell us, not in so many words, that we are children of a lesser God. It is our duty to tell them that we are not. And that is why we have forums such as this. You know, there are those who may say, and I'm one of them, that perhaps in Africa we hold too many seminars, that we hold too many conferences, that we hold too many colloquia. But I hold the view that these things must be repeated time and time again, so that if they are clear, they become even clearer. Is it not true that gold must be in the fire and the furnace before it is refined? Is it not true that Africa has men and women, the 1.2 billion of us, that we have the ability to catapult this continent to a higher level? You know, there was a time that Africa deluded herself, that a leader was one in the nature of Moses, communing directly with God, and that this leader had a rod and staff, and that he would part the Red Sea of disease, and disease would disappear by a pronouncement of abracadabra. That this leader would call and summon manna from heaven, and manna would fall. No, that is not leadership. Leadership is all of us, each one of us, in our little villages. The great American Ralph Waldo Emerson was right when he said, when we want the world to be clean, don't complain about the dirt in the world. Sweep your front yard and let your neighbor sweep their front yard. And lo and behold, when we have all swept, the world will be clean. I'm now on a spiritual dimension. Mother Teresa was also right when she said, when you go into a room and you find that there is darkness, don't complain about the darkness. Take a candle, light your candle, let your neighbor light a candle, and light will conquer the darkness. You know, I've been asked to give a concluding keynote address, not to preach and pontificate. So I must now move to conclude. And in my conclusion, warning you as I do, that having sat next to a politician, when I say conclude, that is the beginning of the second phase of my speech. But let me conclude by saying the following things. That this continent is now at crossroads. And when you are at crossroads, it means that you are faced with two roads. And you've got to make a conscious decision which is the road to take. And I think Africa made this decision. In the year 2013, the African leaders, whether you like them or not, that is another debate. You elected them, or they happen to be the leaders, and therefore they are the political leaders. And it is important to make a distinction between leadership in its broad sense and political leadership. Political leadership is the most visible leadership and the most effective in terms of marshalling all our resources and ensuring that they are coordinated in a manner that benefits us all. That is why political leadership is at the very heart of human development. The politicians sat in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia and came up with Agenda 2063. You know, Agenda 2063 says many things, but this is how I imagine Africa Agenda 2063. That in the year 2063, South Africa will have a GDP of 3 trillion United States dollars. And at that time, we shall not be measuring our GDP in dollar terms. We shall be measuring our GDP in Afro terms. Our currency will be called Afro. And the Afro will be the strongest currency in the world. And the GDP of South Africa will be 3 trillion. That the per capita income of South Africa will be 30,000 Afro. And that all our children will go and gain education from primary to university, the cost being underwritten by our taxes. That all our minerals will have a value addition. That we shall no longer be importing complete products from China. There will be a mobile phone. Namibia will be manufacturing a mobile phone. And that 1 million Africans will be using that mobile phone. That phone will be called Mobi Africa. And Namibia will not stop there. I look to that day, Botswana will no longer be selling any cows to Europe. Those cows and the meat from Botswana will be consumed in the continent of Africa, and Lesotho will not be left behind. And Eswatini will also be a Shangri-La where we will go for tourism, and it will not stop there. Mozambique will have some of the biggest ports in Africa, and Tanzania will be there, and Malawi will be there, and Zambia will be there, and Angola will be there, and Equatorial Guinea will have new leaders, and Equatorial Guinea will be the equivalent of the Silicon Valley. In 2063, the Democratic Republic of Congo will no longer have any conflicts. We'll have power being generated from the Inga Dam, and I can assure you that at that time, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and South Sudan, and Ethiopia, and Eritrea, and Somali, and Djibouti, there'll be a road connecting all these countries. And it will not stop there. It will go on to Central African Republic. It will go on to Cameroon, and Gabon, and Benin, and Togo, and Sierra Leone, and Liberia, and the Gambia, and Mali, and Mauritania, and all these countries, and Sao Tome, and Principe, and the Seychelles, and Mauritius, because there'll be leaders at that time. You know, in 1978, when I was reading Chinua Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart, the elders asked the question, and where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana dies? Today I want to submit to you that where we sat, I saw old bananas. But when I look at this side, I see the young suckers that are growing when the old banana dies. And the truth of leadership, as I conclude, true leadership, Julius Kambarage Nyerere was right. If you are a true leader, you are not successful unless your successor succeeds. And this is the message that we must send to all African leaders. The other thing that we must tell our leaders, and we who are leaders wherever we are, is that leadership is a relay marathon race. and that leadership is intergenerational. You are not a leader unless you have grown leaders, and you are not a leader unless you are a servant. Jesus of Nazareth was right. He amongst you who wants to lead, he must be a servant. Our Africans of old were right that our chiefs were not rulers over us, but custodians. So, my friend Masiza, you have brought us to a good thing. For those of you who are present in this assembly, go out now into the world. Go out into the world knowing and recognizing that Africa will be built village by village. Go out into the world to know that you are the drop that will make the ocean overflow. Go out into the world recognizing what the Chinese long recognized, that the greatness of the ocean is because the ocean does not reject any river. So go out there and take the knowledge that is necessary. So go out into the world recognizing that Africa will fail or succeed on leadership, and leadership means servanthood. So go out there. The world has seen too many comedians. The world now wants actors who will serve. Go out and be blessed.